support here at the AA. Next, we're going to continue and hear from all the classes of the milestone years. Before we start, though, I'd like to acknowledge a member of the class of 1939 who is here celebrating her 75th anniversary. She's right here in the front row, Shirley Zebrowitz-Bleeman, and she and her son flew in from LA just for a reunion. So everyone, please give her a warm welcome. Thank you for being here, Shirley. And next up we have, representing the January graduating class of 1949, Mildred Spicer.
Please tell me if you can't hear me. Apparently this side of the auditorium is the popular side. But we want to honor the other half of the January 49 class is the June class. We're sort of the bookends for the auditorium. Do you realize how many reunions 49ers have had since we graduated? Not 10, not 15, but over 20. The genealogy of our class and the evolution of the alumni to save the high school from extinction is a story told many times. The story never told is that of the impact of personal connections. With that in mind, 75 years ago, a miracle occurred. I actually graduated. January 1949 with my class. I had majored in extracurric, not robotics. The connection to Hunter and to my fellow students never changed. In fact, it actually began before I ever arrived at Hunter in 1946. As I go through the Rolodex of time, images slip in and out of many memories of Hunterites. Then and now, wherever I am and have been worldwide, the unexpected pops up, a Hunter connection. Think of a parade of all these Hunter links. Well, how about just a limited lottery to share with you a personal sampling? As a 12-year-old, I went to Girl Scout camp. With that, my earliest connection to the future was about to happen. My bunkmate was Harriet Constad. There she is. We met again when taking a Hunter entrance exam. And presto, here we are today. Right down the road is Rhea. Well, by a hair. We met at Hebrew school. We too became future classmates, and she was actively involved with many reunions. Lifelong connections were made then. And I know I have some to the June class too, Gabriella Wolfson and Abby Gerfine, that go back to that time. Hunterites dispersed in their own diaspora. Many names unfamiliar from different classes, went to different places, different choices, but always happy to connect to hometown Hunterites. Ooh, la la. There I was in Paris, dining with our own chanteuse, Mimi Rossan, class of '68, now Marie Louise. Her dream, always to live and sing there. What an exciting Hunter connection. You go to Paris, look her up. Then, in London, tea with Lady Joseph. At Hunter, Helen Guggenheimer, class of '48, was wife of Sir Keith Joseph, Margaret Thatcher's closest advisor. Don't kid yourself. Brilliant, outspoken Helen was Sir Keith's closest advisor. And our visits continued, and boy, was that a connection. And then I'm brunching with Robin Bernstein, in the class of '74. Okay. A transplanted lawyer, linguist to Stockholm, her hearth and home there, and today her 40th reunion connection. Ay, to Mexico, Guanajuato we go, and Olivia Cole, class of '60, actor, excelente, not great Spanish for me. It didn't matter. An afternoon we indulged in guacamole or something like that. Olivia was a different connection, a fiesta. Ole. Well, those international connections with Hunterites were a blast. Hunterites are always fascinating, but life abroad brought some other pizzazz. Oh yes, there were very special domestic connections, which are a wow too. Take Bea Fitzpatrick, class of '43, very much a rarity of the time. She took the business corporate role, and from her experience as a woman in the world, formed a nonprofit, AWED, or American Women's Economic Development, to help women go into business. And after going there for business advice, I discovered Bea was Hunter High. Well, quite a connection. Incidentally, my pickles were sold at Zabar's. Judy Zabar, class of '50. When teaching computer games at SeniorNet, Adele Cohn, class of '59, was chair there. So we're talking about connections. They were there no matter where. But three of the most unusual connections. About 10 years ago, out of the blue, a call came from Helene Spearman, class of '61, a professional singer and performer. Her news, she was marrying a composer. Well, after my congratulations, Helene said, "I'd like you to become my wedding planner." I laughed and said, "I've never planned a wedding, and I've never been married." Her reply, "You're the best organizer I know." Well, the challenge is accepted. The wedding went forth with musical guests and waiters bursting into spontaneous song. It was a ball and a fun-filled connection. The ultimate French connection came from an Arizona classmate, Eleanor Ullman Light. It was unbelievable revelation and promise. She had sued the French government for restitution for property left behind when escaping from the Nazis. Funds received would go to the alumni. Eleanor asked that I represent her at the hearing at the French consulate in New York. A dramatic case was made for the value of the worldly goods. Eleanor was ecstatic over the settlement that went to Hunter High. It was more than she had ever expected, and a heartwarming connection for all concerned. And that, in fact, led to my special connection in organizing, forming the Institute of Responsible Media here at the high school. And that came out of US Illinois. Over a year ago, a surprise call came from Ava Chien, class of 79. And here's someplace, there she is, yay. Well, Ava had a business that involved China and beauty products. Sure, I had been to China, but I sure knew nothing about beauty products. With curiosity, we got together for tea. Didn't quite know what was to be. An intriguing 3-month experiment was agreed to, a weekly conference call. Well, it's now been ongoing 15 months, I think, and awesome. My consultant, an advisor, what we have to ask Ava. And I have to say, she's a remarkable woman. It's been quite a ride, a very special connection. Congratulations on your 35th anniversary today, and much success with your multiple enterprises. You want to know about business, this is the lady to go to. What did all these Hunter connections have in common?
People.
Well, I'm glad they were people, but they were all women. Now today, we're doing a first, a connection never done before. And we're very excited and happy to invite Richard Levy, class of 85, to be an honorary member of the January 49ers. He is to be a goodwill ambassador, connecting the link between the all-women's classes and the co-ed classes. To get to know each other, the young and the mature, the male and the female. Hunterites promoting their own peace pact. We can even stop singing, "Anything you can do, I can do better." Okay, with pleasure, let me present brave young man. And I have to present him an authentic certificate for this occasion. Richard, this is for you.
To graduate from Hunter once is an honor. To graduate to be part of 2 classes.
I want you all to get to know the goodwill ambassador.
Thank you, and thank you to the class of 49. As I said, this is an honor to be part of 2 classes of Hunter, and it's doubly so because, as has been noted several times, the class of 49 was one of the all-female classes at Hunter College High School. I was part of the class of 1985, which meant really the last students with any first-hand memory of Hunter being an all-female school were graduating as I matriculated. And given Hunter's academic bent, you can imagine the joy that, and there's really no kind way of putting it, the geekiest male members of these first classes experienced when they realized that the big person on campus, we learned quickly, the big person on campus was not the captain of the basketball team, but rather the president of the math club. But from what I understand, their joy was tempered when these males realized that their main competition for the role, whether it was captain of the basketball team or president of the math club, were Hunter women, a cohort that has never taken a back seat to anyone. And you can imagine the further confusion when, after 6 years from 7th grade through 12th grade of studying and socializing with strong, smart, confident women, these young men were released into the world. Now, some of these men went from Hunter High to various Ivy League schools where the women were, on average, almost as smart as Hunter women. Then there were students like me, whose years of what might politely be called high school academic indifference landed us in the colleges and universities that, well, let's just say they reflected the rest of America. So I ended up in a university located in the South, and I'd offer more identifying detail, but I'm really afraid that my alma mater's board of trustees would sue for libel. But what I can tell you, and this is a true story, is that during my first semester of my freshman year in this Southern university, I met a female student who rather bold-facedly told me that she was at this school to earn her MRS degree. She was there solely to meet and marry a rich husband, after which she planned to drop out. True story. Now, I have to give her credit for planning because I met her in an economics class. But 6 years of high school with Hunter women does not prepare one for a statement like that. And sadly, at this university, there were a lot of men who were very focused on being the sort of husband she said she wanted to marry. Well, I came home for winter break during that freshman year, and I told this story to a bunch of Hunter friends. And I will never forget the reaction of one of the women in this group. After making a series of retching noises, she announced, "If I ever want a rich husband, I'll just earn enough to buy my own." And then she paused and said, "If." That single word, "if," sums up the very best of Hunter College High School's female students. I know the decision to make the school co-ed in 1974 was controversial. Thank you and good night. I know the decision to make this school co-ed in 1974 was controversial. But all I can say is that any man who's had a chance to be in an academic environment with a Hunter woman is a better man for it. So today I say both to the class of 1949 and to all of you, thank you.
Well, wherever we may be, we look forward to 2049, our 100th anniversary. And yours, Richard, was the 64th, even more connections. So thank you all.
And now we will hear from the graduating class from June 1949, Gloria Evangeline Hooper Raspberry.
Good morning. 27 days, less than 65 years ago today, a group of 177 young women, the largest graduating class at that time in the history of Hunter College High School, received their diplomas and went on to institutions of higher learning all over this country, and ultimately to make their mark in various fields, academia, medicine, the classroom, business, the workplace, and even the home. The class of June 1949. Who are we? We were victims of the Holocaust, of discrimination, of prejudice, of glass ceilings, of closed doors and other barriers. But we survived. One of the major reasons we survived was Hunter College High School. Who are we? Check out the book display and you'll find one of us who's written more than 40 children's books. You'll find, if you check the archives of some of the professional journals, like the Clearinghouse for Science, Society, and Education, or leaf through the pages of the Times, or if you visit us at the museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, you'll find us even today. But most importantly, if you check with the family members and friends and colleagues and co-workers and students whose lives we have affected and changed because of the dedication, the vision, the wisdom, the caring, the courage that we learned in Hunter College High School. These are the ones that we've affected most. We have fond memories of Hunter College High School, and because of limitations we were told of no more than 5 minutes, we can't go into detail, but we would like to share one story with you, because we do have wonderful stories to tell. Her maiden name begins with S, and her marriage name begins with S. And she is all spirit, sagacity, and spunk. Dr. Jane Schwartz-Schultz.
Angie talked me into doing this. And I can say that after a fantastic start at Hunter High School and graduating from Hunter College, I wanted to go to medical school, but unfortunately there was quite a small quota for females in medical schools at that time. So that didn't materialize, and a friend of mine said, why don't you go to engineering school? And I said, well, not having any idea what that entailed, I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Yes, I was the first one in my family to attend college. In fact, I was the first one to graduate from high school. I was one of 2 women students in the Columbia School of Engineering at the time. However, in physical chemistry, I sat next to a guy named Jerry Schultz. We were seated alphabetically, and I was Jane Schwartz, and that was very fortunate because he's over there. There were a number of fellow students who were World War II veterans, and they really kept me from feeling isolated because they knew what a woman was. Many of them were married, and it wasn't quite as isolating because I had gone to a female high school and a female college. I never did get a job as an engineer, but I worked as a chemist. I taught for a while high school chemistry and biology, plus other subjects during the Sputnik era when they were crying for teachers of science. And when the teaching world became kind of bureaucratic, I decided it was time to go for a PhD. And I got gotten interested in human genetics, and so I received a PhD in human genetics in 1970 from the University of Michigan. My 3 kids had a great time at graduation. They were running up and down the aisles. And the guy who sat next to me in physical chemistry at Columbia was on the platform. He was chairman of the Department of Chemical Engineering at the time at Michigan. After that, I worked for 4 government agencies, 3 major universities, doing both research and later administrative roles. We lived in Rockland County, New York, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, and currently Riverside, California. I did a stint for a nonprofit corporation who distributed human tissue for research, which was kind of interesting. And along the way, I had the opportunity to work in the Netherlands for a year, and while I was involved most positively with professional experiences until about 2 years ago when lung cancer slowed me down. So far, I'm still traveling around, and I've had enjoyed going all over the world to various places. And I was well prepared for all this. And it was a busy life by graduating with a Hunter degree. I got it.
Thank you so much for that. Next, we will hear from Lisa Rabinowitz, representing the class of 1959.
Hi, everyone. That was a very hard act to follow. Absolutely terrific. Actually, I'm the class of 1960, but I volunteered for 1959. I thought it was smart getting into Harvard, into Hunter. I graduated in 3 years instead of 4, which was silly because I missed out on so many good teachers for another year. That was what I appreciated the most. I've been to many schools since then, but I've never had as many impassioned, dedicated teachers in all subjects. I think we all agree from 1959. When I distributed notices about the reunion, several women who could not make it, we were still all-women's school in 1959, sent us some notes. And this one kind of summarizes how we felt. As Maya Angelou said, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how people feel about what you've said. So she wrote, I fully intended to join today, but after a car accident, minor but rattling, on Friday I've decided to stay home this weekend. I wanted to share my good wishes for your health and continued engagement with life and learning that we enjoyed at Hunter. I continue to serve as a superintendent of schools in upstate New York, witnessing and helping to shape the education and development of new generations. Nourished by love of family and friends, I am grateful for opportunities to give back and support others. I have come to appreciate the Dalai Lama's definition of effort, joyous perseverance. That is probably the feeling I got from the 1959ers last night and yesterday when we spent time together. The previous coordinator of reunion, Debbie Forcielli, was kind enough to write me a note afterwards adopting me to the class of 1959. So I thank you very much because you're very kind, accomplished women. The opportunity to give back is what I heard last night. The women are still working part-time, teaching, volunteering, but still on the go and very much on the move. And that is so exciting. When I first met them, we met at the Museum of Modern Art to have a private tour of the Gauguin exhibit. As several women approached, I said, you don't belong here, you look too young. Why are you here? And so they are fit and they are eager to learn. So I'm glad we went to Gauguin because we found out that he was not only a painter, but a sculptor of wood and etchings, and how much he imagined what life in Tahiti was like as opposed to how it really was. And it was given by someone who is a curator of the New York Public Library, and she was ready for our questions if we had them. We followed that with rain, And then we walked to the Algonquin Hotel, which, as many of you may know, was the origination of the Round Table with Dorothy Parker and Robert Benchley, who worked across the street and came over to drink regularly. The New Yorker was started there. Hemingway, Fitzgerald, all the famous writers used to come and gossip. And so we had our dinner there, and we exchanged information like, there we have a grandmother whose grandson is graduating from Hunter in a few days' time. So I think that's a great thing. This is on the back of my certificate. We have overcome a lot of things in our class, and I'm sure the 49ers did as well. In terms of health issues and life issues, we are living a little bit through our grandchildren, if we've had children and grandchildren. And we are longing to return what we received. And so I am hoping that our class and all of you can contribute some way to the alumni and to these wonderful kids who did the robotics and whatever else they're doing here in the theater and everywhere else. Let's see. So the reason I did those two activities is because these women are continuing to learn and continuing to be compassionate and competent. So forgive the alliteration. So despite some of the setbacks of middle age, I hope I'm not misusing Maya Angelou's poem too badly when she says, we're still on the rise. We still rise. I also want to thank Len Spire, who is a famous street photographer who came to take pictures at the museum and at the Algonquin Round Table, which we'll distribute to the newsletter. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to show everybody. Our class mascot was Giuseppe the opera-loving giraffe. Okay? He was red and white. These are two of his sons. Right now they're taking after his wife, but they haven't hit puberty yet. And you know that there are a lot of changes. So we'll probably change color then. Secondly, we would like to thank Lisa profusely from the bottom of our hearts for organizing this group for this weekend. Okay? And wait until 60, because that's 5 years from now. You're going to see something. At any rate, what we'd like to do we want to sing it? Yeah. Good. We're going to sing you our Giuseppe song. Giuseppe was a 9-foot red and white giraffe. And when our class graduated, about 5 or 6 of us rolled him down Lexington Avenue to bring him to the hospital, to the children's ward. You know, he was beautiful. We're going to sing Hunter, we present you Giuseppe. Yes. I got to put my glasses on. That's our note. You ready? Maybe. Hunter, we present you Giuseppe, made way till he's the best of his kind. Please do not laugh, he's a cultured giraffe, highly superior mind. He's a connoisseur of the opera, goes to the Met from September to June. How he can carry a tune. He never misses a night at the opera, he's with the conductor on cue. He's interesting than playing cards with his friends at the zoo. Leonard Bernstein is singing his praises, and Madame Callis goes tantrums for him. Why does his fame celebrate his name? He is handsome, disarmed, he's suave and he's charming. Just stop easy.
Thank you very much, class of 1959. And now representing the class of 1964, Susan Spector.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everybody. And before we begin, I want to thank Barbara Mayer-Lambert, who helped with planning, hospitality, and hand-holding, which was a very big job. And I want to thank Beth Brown-Scoble, who gave a private tour for us at the New York Historical Society yesterday, where she's a docent. And Beth and Helene Geismar-Katz for providing, at our dinner last night, corsages from Plaza Florist for me and Barbara. That was a very lovely surprise. Now to substance. The class of 1964 is unique in Hunter history. We were 300 girls, the largest class in the history of the school. It was never done before, it has never been done afterward. Draw your own conclusions. But when I started to think about this presentation, I kept coming back to the history of our class and the history of the society in which we lived. We were actually a swing generation of women. We were children in the I Love Lucy era, and we came of age with Ms. Magazine and Gloria Steinem. And we have somebody here to do that as well. We were the first generation to have televisions as a regular thing in our homes. We started with Howdy Doody, and we went straight through to Men Walking on the Moon Live. So I thought, gee, we're the TV generation. So instead of talking to you, I wanted to show you what it was like for our years and our generation in the years that we were at Hunter. And then it occurred to me, the technology today is a little bit out of my skill set. So, in the interests of what Mildred would call intergenerational collaboration, I did some research and some contact, and I found a young man named Kevin Shue from the class of 2013. Kevin was born with a camera in his hand, and he has the talent to match. He's extraordinary. And we have been working together for, I looked it up, since February 28th. We have been on location, we have been at lunch, we have been in offices, and we have created something that we hope you enjoy.
So why is it important to be here? For me and for many others, not just my class, but I think so many in the room, the simple answer may be that other than family, Hunter High School was the most important change factor in my life. So I stand here representing the class of 74, but as with most, the noisy ones in the corner, but as with most descriptions of us, one number is too simple. We entered in 68 and in 69, and like everything happening in the country then, Change was the operative word for our years at Hunter. Due to threats to close Hunter, yet again, the curriculum changes resulting from the Constituent Assembly, which as a delegate from the 7th grade, I remember watching teachers and students arguing and yelling at each other, which was pretty much of an eye-opener for a 7th grader going, okay, this is like no school I think ever existed. And the Innovative Programs Committee, we attended Hunter when it changed from a 6-year school to a 5-year program with a 6th-year option called the intercollegiate year, fondly or not so fondly known as ICY. As a result, our graduations flowed from 73, 74, and 75, but we have decided we consider ourselves all part of this larger group known as the class of 74. We started out in the Hunter High School building on 68th Street in 68 and 69, but due to the tumultuous years and open enrollment at CUNY, we were evicted. And we were sent to 2 floors, 13 and 14, of an office building at 466 Lexington on 45th Street. Think of it, over 1,000 girls, give or take a few, flowing through the lobby, the elevators, and hanging out on the streets. We had J. Walter Thompson, ad agency, Mad Men, anybody who doesn't know who J. Walter Thompson was, below us, and Penn Central corporate offices above us. Our cafeterias became Zum Zums, Sbarro's, Oscars at the Waldorf, and various other local eateries. Gym was the 53rd Street Y, the East Side tennis courts, even classrooms. As someone reminded me, anyone remember seated volleyball? We were affected, influenced, and involved in the demonstrations and strikes at all the local colleges, the protests in the streets, the marches in New York, in DC, due to the murders at Kent State, Vietnam, the anti-war movement was in full swing, racial politics were at its height at that point, women's movement was growing rapidly, bringing issues of gender equality into our daily discussions. You should have listened to an argument over whether bras or no bras should be allowed in a school full of adolescent girls. I can still remember sitting in my 7th grade social studies class, and all of a sudden we heard pounding footsteps running down the hallway and voices yelling, they were killing students at Kent State, strike, strike. And the whole school, and all these students, 7th graders at that time, looking at each other going, what do we do? Let's go! Out we went. And strike we did. The Watergate hearings were televised in our school library, and some of us even cut class sometimes to watch those. And we, of course, also, I was thinking about it when the film was showing the Kennedy years, and we watched a sitting president resign because of impeachment. It's a very different kind of set of attitudes you get from those messages. We even had our own bomb scares at 466 Lexington. Yeah, that made those office workers love us even more. We were the end of the hippie generation. We were all girls, 11 to 18, traveling by foot, bus, train, and ferry from all corners of the city to take advantage of the opportunities that this school offered. Some things never changed, though the all girls did after we left. To combat the dangers of the city, we had a buddy system pairing us in 7th grade with older students who were to accompany us in our travels. And the New York City of the early 70s and its graffiti-covered subways was a much grittier, maybe even scarier place than the New York City of today in some ways. Most of us soon found new friends to travel with and to share survival tools to stave off the challenges of New York life underground. I can still remember some things I used to hear about sharp implements that kept people whose hands traveled too close. Elbows, yeah, well, elbows, yeah, but you know. But we I was in in 7th grade, a subway crash and a subway fire. I never mentioned those things to my parents. Somehow I got that one. But we persevered or schlepped, and because Hunter was a destination for us all, for education and professional advancement, with the message that a young woman could be as smart, as accomplished, as ambitious, as demanding, or even as obnoxious as any male might be. Did it teach us or make us think that we could have it all, as is so hotly debated these days? I'm not sure if we thought about the distinctions or questions then. We were women, hear us roar, as the song went. And now when successful young women reject the term feminist to describe themselves, our time at Hunter encouraged us to claim the label and the pride it implies in ourselves as women. We remember Ms. Magazine, Our Bodies Ourselves, as part of our extracurricular reading. That was very educational too. We were leaning forward in our classrooms and in the hallways then. Sometimes that meant we butted heads with our teachers and with each other, but that only made us more confident of our developing abilities. And of course, we ran everything. Student government, newspapers, clubs, and were made aware that we could take control. We had a special sense of camaraderie with our teachers. I think that was even heightened and enforced by the fact that we had to make this move from the real school building to these office floors, had to pack up everything, figure out how to navigate such small quarters all together. We had respect for their skills and knowledge, but able to spoof them in our senior sing and senior show. As a good friend reminded me, Tinkerhoff, Parker Pan. Hunter provided us with so much: tools to succeed academically, confidence to pursue higher education, and the expectations that any profession or career we aimed for was possible for us, gender notwithstanding. Everything around us in this city and at Hunter was so intense for us. Our physical and educational environments were challenged and changing. 2 floors in that office building, mini courses, trimesters, and the dangers and adventures of navigating and exploring New York City. Through it all, we had each other, a gaggle of adolescent girls, and last night, as they were all pouring into the room for our class party last night, I turned and said to someone, "Oh my God, we sound exactly the same, 40 years later, if not noisier." No cell phones, no earbuds, no screens, no other forms of technological distractions to shut out each other or the world. We had our time in our Hunter bubble, and then our tether, those ordinary telephones with rotary dials, which held us together after hours. And those hours on the telephone shocked, at least my parents were shocked by how many hours. My father used to say, "You saw them all day. What could you have to talk about?" Until they finally gave up the fight and got me my own phone line. Of course, our own teenagers probably startle us now with their connection to their devices, like robots. Robots. I remember when microfiche at the Mid-Manhattan Library was the most startling research tool I had ever seen. From all this, the most important skill and lesson we learned in our Hunter bubble, certainly in hindsight it seems to me, is the value of female friendship, of sisterhood. I think I have heard from each person here that she continues to see, to be in touch with, to remain best friends with, to share her life with at least one Hunter friend. We shared so many experiences through these 4, 5, 6 years in such close quarters and with such intensity that the ties that bind us have stretched out over 40 years. They bring us back here again and again, even to volunteer to organize again and again. to return to Hunter, to celebrate those connections and the school that changed our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And now, representing the class of 1984, we have Pam London and Ray Sau.
We didn't expect something quite so formal from everybody else, so. But we thought we would do this tag team style since we were a fully integrated co-ed class. And we were a very small class. I think we graduated either 181 or 189. So we've actually stayed very close-knit in some ways for a long time. And at our 20th reunion, the organizers who organized the 25th and the 30th, shout out to Emma Owens-Cairns and Howard Shaw, who are not here this morning, but they organize a fine gathering of our class every time. And for the 20th reunion, embraced the Yahoo group for communication, and we sort of embraced that very easily and actually stayed in touch from the 20th reunion all the way through, moving in through social media, and from Yahoo to Facebook and Twitter and all of those other things, so that we've actually stayed in very close touch over these last 10 years. And have stayed friends and organized mini reunions, and if somebody is in town from somewhere else, we're all sort of online talking to each other. One of the things that came up in one of those discussions this year was one of our classmates posted something about, does anybody remember our entry exam into the class of 1984? And we all talked about the essay that we had to write, and everybody remembered it and what they wrote about, and whether or not what they wrote about was a thing that got them in or not got them in. It was actually kind of amusing, and that went on for about 2 or 3 days online talking to each other. We had and the other thing that we did was, because of that, when we did for this reunion, we were also a very social class, and I think a lot of people remembered our parties back in the day, and we are still that class. We had a 40% turnout to our event last night, where we essentially commandeered a bar downtown called Punch, and were there until they closed and tossed us out. And we wandered home at about 3:30 in the morning. So that's pretty much representative of our class, and we have our share of doctors and lawyers and financial advisors and career military and all of the other career choices that we could have. We have a range of, we have classmates who have a 1-year-old and conceived in the usual way, and a classmate who has a 25-year-old. So we have we're sort of in that generation also, where we have people who sort of span that sort of thing. Essentially, I think that's part of what makes our class so special, is sort of our ability to communicate with each other and our ability to stay in touch with each other. And we were thinking about this last night and sort of going, do you remember this teacher or that teacher, and who had classes with whom, and that sort of thing. But one of the things that we did think about, and it's something that I see a lot because in what I do, I'm a pediatrician, and one of the things that comes up is this whole problem recently with people talking about bullying and what bullying can lead to. And one of the things that we talked about last night in the midst of all of this was how we never felt like we ever experienced any of those things at Hunter. That although there were people that hung out with this group or that group, there was so much overlap in what who we were with and what we were doing that we never actually experienced, but apparently people experience at other high schools, which is that we weren't cliquey. If we weren't friends with somebody, it was probably because we never had a class with them, or we weren't doing the same track as that other person. It wasn't that we didn't like each other. We all hung out in the hallway. We all sort of did extracurriculars together, and none of us remembered anybody being made fun of or anybody having that kind of an experience certainly within our class. And that was one of the things that made Hunter a very, very special place, I think. And so essentially, I think that's what made us stay close to the school, and we came from everywhere. People flew in from LA, people flew in from Seattle, people flew in from Florida, people flew in from Toronto. So we had a good representation of everybody coming back for reunion. And I'm going to hand it over to Ray, because I've talked long enough.
Thanks, Pam. Pam's unusual in that, she was always athletic, as I recall, in high school, but since then, she's completed about 25 marathons and is working on her 5th Ironman. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our class gift and giving. I realize that the act of giving is more important than the amount. And last week we got some statistics and we found out that as of last week our class had pledged about $9,000 over 25 donors, which wasn't bad. It was about 15% or so if I get my math right. I was in that experimental math stuff, so part of that new curriculum. But I felt like we could do better. It wasn't, and I think we all fall into the trap of, well, what I have is small, it's not going to make a difference. And so what I decided to do was to challenge my class, and I basically said, look, if we contribute, for every classmate that contributes, I will kick in another $5. No matter what the amount, you can contribute $1, $10, whatever you're comfortable with, but for every person that contributes, again, I'll kick in $5, and over this reunion weekend, I'll put in 10. So, over our class, that would be either $1,000 or $2,000. It's not a huge amount, but I thought this would challenge our class to get going. Well, in the last few days, not only have we gotten, I think it's up to about 15,000 right now, and probably close to a third of our class. But last night, 4 other classmates joined me in this challenge, and so we could actually turn this thing into another $10,000 or $15,000 by the time it's all paid. So actually, I was wrong in that the act of giving doesn't trump the amount. The act of giving, I believe, actually increases the amount. So and begets more. So, just in parting, I think a few years ago, I read a book that I feel like it changed my life. It was a very simple book. It was called Younger Next Year, and it basically the book is called Younger Next Year. And just to summarize it, it basically says you should do 3 things. One is to exercise 6 days a week. At least 2 of those days, resistance or strength training. The second part I actually like a lot. It's buy all new gear. My wife isn't here, so I can say that. Because you probably have stuff in the closet that you never use because it's 15 or 20 years old, and they've actually improved those things and you'll enjoy it a lot more. I think that's the philosophy. So go out there and get all new gear. But the third thing, and this is probably most important, it was a little bit unusual in that it said, keep up with your friends. And so I just wanted to leave us with hope. I hope that, since we're all in the same reunion cycle, that in 5 years when we get together, we don't say, hey, last night was great. Let's not wait another 5 years before we get together again. I hope what we're saying is, last night was great. I can't believe we're getting together so soon after the last one. Thank you very much.
class of 1989, I have Diane Schreitzman Mortimer.
Well, thanks. Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks for everyone who organized this. We sure appreciate it, and it's been great to see everybody. We had a great time last night as well. When I think of our topic of what Hunter sort of meant to me, I just had a little story to share with you, so hopefully I get that to you. So a few weeks after I started 7th grade, our science teacher, Mrs. Nicholas, told us to take a look at she told us to take a look at the Science Times and bring in an article to share. I remember her providing the rationale for this assignment by enthusiastically proclaiming, "It's only Tuesday once a week." Well, I lived in Rosedale, Queens. My father was a fireman in Bushwick, and my brothers delivered the Post for a couple of years, but I didn't really have any familiarity with the New York Times. My family didn't read it, and in fact, the card stores in our neighborhood didn't even sell it. So what was I gonna do? But anyway, I was able to get a subscription through the school. So then I started reading it during like the solo parts of my commute, particularly like the bus drive between Jamaica and my home. And then so I was able to successfully complete my science homework. And along the way, I realized that I kind of really grew to like reading the paper and see how it kind of related to all the other neat things that I was learning here. So during my 6 years here, I had tons of memorable times and influences, and I was really recall fondly swimming or running on the hills of Van Cortlandt, or learning about art at the Met, or having a lot of fun during our excused cuts, and doing some fun stuff in the park. Also had my ICY project at the Endocrinology Laboratory at Mount Sinai. Had a summer job in the soil lab over in Central Park as part of the Conservancy Summer Youth Program. Also things that I got through the school. So certainly super grateful for that. Also really grateful for the Solid Educational Foundation received here, particularly being able to write and think critically and analytically. Did a lot of fun activities like the Argus kind of creative book, and then also a lot of classes that really honed those skills and helped me get them. So super grateful for all that. And then I feel like I really relied really heavily on this background during the ensuing 25 years. I studied nursing and health policy in college, and then worked in mostly neurocritical care units, and had a great experience, and then later had the opportunity to go to medical school. So now I'm a physical medicine and rehab doctor, and working in brain injury medicine. And throughout all of these, really incredible experiences, I've had, the opportunity to meet with people and just get to know people from so many different places and backgrounds. And I really feel like the varied experience that I got because of coming here from where I lived really just sort of paved the way for me to be able to find things in common with just about everybody. If it's sports, the Mets won the World Series when I was here, so that was pretty exciting. Maybe, hopefully they'll win again soon. Yeah, when you guys are here, right? So let's go for the next one, right? And then, or maybe I'll be discussing a book or a current event and putting it into the context that I just learned to so carefully consider, all those years ago in all my classes. So I just feel like I've been able to develop this commonality. Maybe it's based on a shared hope for the future, which seems like it's in pretty good hands in this school. So I just wanted to relate that during all these experiences I've had, all the places I've lived, I've continued to read the New York Times pretty much every day. And I still love the Science Times. And usually find my way as I'm making through it, just smiling, kind of muttering to myself, and at some point saying, it's only Tuesday once a week. Better make the most of it. And that's what I try to do.
And now we're jumping ahead to our youngest milestone class, 2009, and Alex Boras and Ali Essie will speak.
The one person from our class that woke up this morning with us. Thank you for starting the clapping. The rest of them are still asleep.
Yeah. We had a good night though. I'm Ali Essie.
And I'm Alex Boras.
And we are the class of 2009 class coordinators.
So as the youngest reunion class here, we thought we'd play our role as the babies and give you a little Hunter then and now in the 5 years.
When we went to Hunter, Irving Kagan, or Mr. Kagan, was our social studies or constitutional law teacher, not a fellow student, and his sister wasn't a Supreme Court justice.
Lin-Manuel Miranda was known as Mr. Miranda and was a substitute English teacher, not a Tony Award-winning writer, director, actor, and everything else that he's done.
Although I do remember him telling me that he was writing this musical play, he wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but he'd let us know. Pretty well. When we went to Hunter, Miss Siegman, Lisa Siegman, was our 7th grade English teacher, not the assistant principal.
And Tony Fisher was the new math teacher, not the principal of the entire high school.
But 5 years isn't that long. We are probably the only class in this room to have had a Facebook group while we were at Hunter. And we used said Facebook group to plan our event last night almost exclusively. So we're probably the only one who can say that we went all the way through and still use that group.
And over these 5 years, many other things haven't changed. I still have this t-shirt.
We looked over in one of the classrooms and we realized that the textbooks are exactly the same and still have ours and our classmates' names in them, and also probably some of yours.
I remember in 7th grade social studies reading from one of my textbooks that looked very old, but reading in it that man one day hoped to walk on the moon. But going back to things that haven't changed, the current seniors were actually students with us. When we were seniors, they were the fresh-faced 7th graders, just seeing Hunter for the first time.
And also something that hasn't changed, the GO office gate mural outside is the one that I personally painted in 9th grade. So you're welcome. But honestly, most importantly, when we walked into the room and came and took a little peek into the auditorium, we decided we'd take a tour around the school and just walked around, reminisced a little bit this morning, just getting over the hangover and trying to get ourselves organized for this speech. It was pretty astounding how much this place still feels like home, and I'm sure that all of you, or the ones at least who experienced that in this building, can feel that connection. So we're really excited to become a part of such a great alumni body, and this has been a really awesome event. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we have a last-minute representative of the class of 1994, Sierra Nutson. So my class is not only hungover, but they didn't make it at all today. And most of that, I think, is not only because they can't hold their liquor anymore, but because they all have, many of them have small children. And one of the funny things about last night was, people are doing such interesting things if you went to Hunter, and they're doctors doing amazing research, they're journalists, they're starting NGOs and doing all kinds of really fascinating breakthrough work. And the 100% across the board thing we talked about more than anything else was our families and either the kids that we now have or where our brothers and sisters were. I mean, I think probably 10 people yesterday asked me where my brother was, who actually went to Hunter 6 years after I did. And people just remembered about your family, say, "Is your dad still in New York? How's this going?" And it was really incredible. I think you cannot see people for 10 years and come back and they remember these things about you in your lives and care about the answer, and that is really special. I just wanted to say two things because my class isn't here, so I'm not actually representing anybody. But I just wanted to say, particularly to the class of 49 and some of the folks who've spoken, listening, I thought a lot about coming today. I came up from DC for this, and I have a sick little person at home, so I was going to get on the train early, but I want to say it was so amazing to listen to you, and to hear that all of the amazing world events that you were part of and that you pushed through, the glass ceilings,
all of the pieces of it's really incredible. And I was listening, thinking about it, and this whole lean in generation discussion that's going on right now. And I think what was really remarkable is that from Hunter, from my age range, for many of us, it was never a question that you were going to be able to do what you wanted if you put your heart to it and you exerted your energy. It was never a question, and we owe that to you all. And it's just an amazing transformation over time of people fighting to be able to do what they want and to work on really incredible problem sets regardless of what era you come from. I'm currently in DC, and I work at the White House. I'm at the National Security Council, and so I was sitting there and I was thinking, you know, Washington Seminar, I did this when I was in high school, and they must be coming, it's around that time. And so I went online and I emailed the Social Studies Department and I said, are you guys coming down to Washington Seminar? Can I help? Can I do anything? And they're like, no, of course not. We've had this plan for 5 months. We have everybody from, you know, Supreme Court justices all the way down. You know, we're meeting with people we meet with every year who are way more important than you. So, no, they were much nicer than that. But they said, please, no, come to an alumni dinner. And so I did. And what I wanted to leave us with from the alumni conversation was that I sat down with these guys, kids, grown-ups, emerging thinkers, emerging activists, and they were amazing. They were incredible. And I said to them, I said, you know, everyone always tells you you're smart, and you know you're smart, and it, you know, you're actually going to have to squeeze that big head of yours back down to size when you go into the real world. But it really is incredible. And the really important thing about it, I thought, was that they were asking all of the important questions. They were asking about drones and about human rights and about what we do next on places like Libya in the Middle East. They were asking about constitutional law. They were asking about, well, a lot of us were in national security, so a lot of the questions were in that vein. But they were really demanding answers, and they had done so much research. They had Googled everyone. I think they're like the only people who've ever Googled, you know, 5 pages down on my Google profile. And they had done their research, and they were asking, you know, they had their facts behind them, and they were asking these questions. And I said, they said, what was it that was special to you about Hunter? And I talked through some of the things, and it was amazing. Our experiences were 20 years apart, but they were so similar. And I think it's the same for everyone in this room, is that the really remarkable thing about the experience was the people all together. And I said, look at the folks around you, because you will remember them always, and when you run into them again, you will always have a shared experience that you will be able to draw on immediately. But the second thing I said was, please keep asking those questions. We are at an incredible moment in our own development as a country and our own development as a world, and these are really tough problems, and you're asking just the right questions. And so I think as an alumni association, I'm just incredibly supportive of them continuing to do this kind of inquiry, whether it's WashSem or the robotics or just being on the cutting edge of all these pieces. It was really incredible to have that time with them, and I urge you all to have that, to find time like that with them as well, because it was rejuvenating, I will say. From these days in Washington, it was rejuvenating to hear those questions and see them thinking about the world and thinking about it in such amazing ways. So.
And that concludes the General Assembly for today. I thank everyone for coming and participating. And I hope everyone will join us for lunch in the basement of the high school. Thank you.